Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
That's right. We are a positive film critique podcast. Is that the proper English? Doesn't matter. We say positive stuff about no stuffy negative criticism from us here. If we get off track and we say anything negative or derogatory about this film, you're going to hear this sound.
There it
drink,
is.
and we genuinely hope you drink along with us at home, friends.
So, pour yourselves a glass and sit back, get taped to a chair, and listen to some music.
Get taped to a chair. That's right, people. We're talking about Reservoir Dogs as part of our series. Should have seen that by now, which we're going to get into right after our co-host John here gives us a couple shout outs from London. John, shout us out.
Shout outs from London, motherfucker. We have a beer sponsor. His name is Carlos Barroza. If you want to give him a follow, I'm sure he would really appreciate it. The handle is on Instagram, Barrozo Bar 2019. That's CBARROZOBAR 2019. And if you're digging the music,
it's a cold beer sponsor too, not the warm shit they serve over there.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And if you're digging the music and you want to download it for free, you can at soundcloud.com/Dasein-artist. This music is provided by the artist Dasein. That's Dasein. Head on over there and download for free and have some fun. Write into us at The Love of Cinema Pod on every single platform except for Twitter. We are just at The Love of Cinema. But please rate, review, like, subscribe, love, share, all the things. We will get back to you, and we'd really appreciate it. Jeff, you already said it. Let's call out our buddy and friend of the pod who we are dedicating this episode to.
Are we? We're dedicating this episode?
Let's do it. We got to call him out. We take suggestions online, folks.
If you respond to us on social media, we will put your name on international radio.
Yes, the Facebook page currently has a link to the questionnaire where you can set up a movie that you should have seen by now. And we got a bite.
Yeah, that's
what
we
did. We got several bites, and we're going to shame the shit out of our first person who is not on the show. He can't even defend himself, and we're still going to call him out. Jeff, what's his name? What's our buddy's name?
Is it J. Casey Barrett?
It is John Casey Barrett, J. Casey Barrett, Casey Barrett. This guy is a good friend of ours. He's an actor.
I just texted him.
You can catch him on stage at Book of Mormon when it reopens. He is a super talented guy. We love him so much. He has acted in one of our movies before. Fantastic talent, fantastic dude. And for some fucking reason, this guy has never seen Reservoir Dogs. So we are going to talk about it. Yeah.
Casey, that's
for you, Casey.
Okay. Yeah, let's not leave him out there hanging out there to dry. I hadn't either. So.
Oh, good. Okay, cool.
Oh, shit.
I actually thought that Dave hadn't seen it. We love it when one of our co-hosts here hadn't seen a famous film.
Here comes the truth.
Other films in this series, for you who are new to our podcast, include Citizen Kane, Parasite,
why would you?
Singing in the Rain, Social Network, and we are going to keep it rolling. We're going to have a lot of other Psycho. We've had a lot of other great films that we've talked about on the podcast, and we hope that you like and subscribe and give us a listen. Because again, positive film podcast. We are not going to harp on the negative people. So if you want to have a good time talking about movies, hang with us. But Dave, Reservoir Dogs, we're going to come at you in a second after we give the backstory. John, anything else before we get into this?
There's a backstory to this?
Okay, well, here's the backstory. The backstory is that this is widely considered Quentin Tarantino's first film. It's not exactly true. He made a film called My Best Friend's Birthday in 1987, which is apparently not good. I don't know. It's not me, so I don't know. You can't buzz me.
Was it literally him filming someone's birthday and he's claiming that as his first directorial feature?
It's an hour and a half, and I can actually imagine him doing it because he's a very strange dude. So this movie comes out in 1992. Apparently, there was a short film in 1991, which was sort of like a Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights would do this later, where they would shoot like a little kind of spec, almost like of the film, and then use it to try to get it sold.
Saw did that as well.
Saw, you're right. They actually did that real torture too. They tortured their neighbor, and then they said, "Look, this is cool, right?"
Jesus Christ.
Hey, they were from Australia. So
yeah, Melbourne, man. It gets freaky down there.
Damn.
Okay, hold on.
G'day, Melbourne.
So Quentin Tarantino says that he was inspired by Stanley Kubrick's The Killing and the original Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Of course, other people have noticed that it's the exact same plot as a 1987 Hong Kong film called City on Fire by Chow Yun-fat, which was actually based on an Indian movie itself. And Quentin Tarantino, who used to work at a video store, a la Blockbuster, but a private one in California, had seen all of these foreign films.
See, kids, that's why you should always watch foreign films.
Yes,
so you can rip them off and Americanize them. Yes, yeah,
exactly. Anyway, Quentin Tarantino was in acting classes, which apparently was almost a gigantic waste of all of his money, having seen him act. But his producing partner, Lawrence, there it is. Okay, cool. I thought I would get it. Okay.
I could see him reach. I thought I'll let John take this one.
Okay. His producing partner, Lawrence Bender, was in an acting class, and the acting class's teacher gave the script to his wife, who gave the script to Harvey Keitel, who called Quentin Tarantino and said, I like this movie. I want to help produce it, and I want to star in it. And so they got their budget from $30,000 to $1.5 million. And then Quentin Tarantino gets a career out of this. So thank you, Harvey Keitel. This is widely considered to be the greatest independent film of all time because this is 100% independent, although Miramax, Harvey Weinstein gets in there. I don't know what the status of them was. I'm assuming he was a vile person then, as he was later in life. But
he was then, yes.
It was, I thought so too. But it was independently made thanks to Harvey Keitel being able to muster up $1.5 million.
I think Weinstein distributed it and was there after.
And he was in editing because he wanted to cut some of the violence down, because this movie is not as violent as his next film, which he definitely got because of Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino, which would be, of course, Pulp Fiction. But this was considered to be wildly violent for 1992, extremely, extremely violent. And they were going to take some out, and Tarantino said, nah. And look at him. It was so violent that they didn't know how to market it. So they just didn't market the movie. So it actually did really bad at the box office, but obviously became like a Mean Streets like cult classic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's enough of a setup. The plot, as according to IMDb, is when a simple jewelry heist goes horribly wrong, the surviving criminals begin to suspect that one of them is a police informant. Your cast is Harvey Keitel as Mr. White, Tim Roth as Mr. Orange, Michael Madsen as Mr. Blonde. If you don't know who any of these people are, just go watch Quentin Tarantino movies. Chris Penn, Chris Penn, R.I.P., plays nice guy Eddie. Steve Buscemi, Mr. Pink. God,
because of course, why wouldn't you?
The legend, Lawrence Tierney, who was a huge star of 40s, 50s, 60s, etc. Lawrence Tierney plays Joe, who sets the whole thing up. Tarantino's in there as Mr. Brown, although he really wanted to be Buscemi's part, and thank God he let Buscemi do it instead. Thank God. And
also stop doing Australian accents.
That is true, Dave.
I've just had to get that out of my system. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Written and directed by Tarantino, and apparently some background dialogue by his writing partner Roger Avery. We know this, Reservoir Dogs. I will say really quick to everybody watching or listening, I don't know where you came from. We do know this film uses the N-word a lot by white characters. There's some homophobia. There's some maybe anti-Asian comedy. There is white gangsters torturing a cop. So yes, the content, is something that we should at least mention, that we understand that it's sensitive material for nowadays. But we are going to try to...
I had a thought on this actually while I was watching, because I had the same reaction. I'm like, okay, that's like, it's inappropriate, and that sort of thing is just not on. But
true to the characters.
It is true to the characters. And I mean, if we cover it up, then it's like we're taking attention away from it. It's like people do act like this. People do, like, racism is real. So let's confront it. Let's get it out there. Let's get it in people's faces.
Yeah. So especially historically, we are not endorsing that.
Yeah, it's as long as it is like within the bounds of a character or the story you're telling, for obviously.
Right.
Yeah, especially when the characters are assholes.
Yeah, and every single person in this is an asshole.
So yes, it's very white. It's not 100% white, but it's very white. They are assholes, and they take their privilege and they use it against other people. But anyway, we're gonna talk about this film. But if any of you had any concerns about that, just know that we see you, we hear you. We're gonna talk about this as like a historical timepiece, and
this has dated themes.
Yeah,
shall we say?
For sure. So there you go. Jewelry heist gone wrong. Famous people, they don't know who the rat is. A lot of it takes place in a warehouse, which was their rendezvous point. And we see a lot of the action through flashbacks, but it does open in the very famous diner-ish scene where they're talking about Madonna's Like a Virgin and whether or not it's about a giant penis. Which again, maybe not the most sensitive thing in the world, but yes, it's a lot of white dudes in black tuxes right before they go into a jewelry heist, and then they're trying to put the pieces together to figure out who the rat is.
Yeah,
Dave,
I mean,
you've never seen this film.
That fucking opening scene just sounds like somebody left the mics live on The Apprentice.
That's pretty funny. Also, Mr. Blue, who is only in the opening scene, is actually a very famous real life criminal. And he said that this movie's unrealistic because they never would have had breakfast like that altogether. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. John, can you ask Dave our usual question for the one?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you, Dave, our usual question, since we can always have fun with this just to open it up. Dave, we'll find out at the end if you think it was worth watching. But up until 2021, whatever fucking day it is, in late June, why have you never seen this movie until now?
I mean, I went and saw I saw Pulp Fiction, and everyone's raving about it, like this is an amazing film, and I'm like, I guess I enjoyed it, but it was like, yeah. And then a few, like pretty much, I think the only film I've really liked to come out of Tarantino was Django.
Yeah, anyone who's been listening to our podcast for a while knows that.
You're okay about Jackie Brown, though, if I remember correctly.
I was okay with Jackie Brown, but remember the opening scene, I was like, what was the point of that? It was like 10 minutes of dialogue.
I do remember that.
Sure.
Like he loves to throw in this dialogue. And this is the second movie we've done this week that couldn't even wait for the fucking movie to start before they start talking. Like they're talking over the opening logos. It's like we've got so much dialogue we can't fit it in the film.
That's so good to point out, dude. We did pick 2 movies this week with screenplay writers that like words, and they like using a lot of them. They break every rule in screenplay writing and write as much as they can. Yeah.
I was actually talking to someone on Friday night. I was out for drinks because we can do that now, which is great. But he's starting screenwriting, and I was like, if you want a really good example of how you're not doing it wrong, get hold of the Django. How you're not doing it wrong. Get hold of the Django screenplay and read it, because that thing is all over the fucking place. It's a mess. But it won best screenplay. Like it breaks every single convention. Like
you break every rule. Like certainly there's some kind of truth. So let's just get right to it. Like, did the Quentin Tarantino-ness of this debut Quentin Tarantino feature, was it just in the way for you the whole time? Did you enjoy it? Come at me. What'd you think?
The opening scene, it was way, way, way in the way. Okay. I appreciate what he was doing as a filmmaker, but just the dialogue. I'm like, we're like, what, 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in. I can see both sides of the tipping argument that they had. But what does that have to do with the plot? And then they cut to the credits and we got to the next bit and I'm like, oh, I see what he was doing. So at the beginning, it's like, it's very like, what am I listening to? What am I watching? There's a point to it. And I feel like he does that a lot. He'll like take you down the garden path and then go, by the way, that was relevant. And now it's relevant. Because it literally sets up their characters and their interactions with each other. Because if you notice, a lot of them are in groups of 2. Like these 2 people are talking, then these 2 people are talking, and it's it becomes relevant. Like it's an exploration into like Buscemi's character, like Mr. Pink's character. They go through the whole tipping thing, and those people that are ragging on him, and those that are like, well, I'm not tipping if he's not tipping it. Like it sets up the dynamic for later. You don't realize it's doing it. I mean, that's a great way to hide cuts.
What'd you say? I missed that. What'd you ask?
The camera goes behind people's backs a lot to obscure the frame, but instead of like a studio picture might even do like a run credit every time it would cut like black out in somebody's back. Like imagine people sitting in a circle on a table and the camera is kind of behind them, so it's not over them, so that you have an unobstructed view. It keeps getting obstructed. But then later in the film, there's no camera obstruction. So it was the only time in the movie there was obstructed frame. But anyway, so sorry, Dave, you keep going. I didn't know if that.
Yeah, I feel like that was a way to hide edit points. I mean, when you think about it, they were doing this on extremely low budget. A lot of this was run and gun. Right. Especially like there's an anecdote about how when they pulled the woman out of the car at the traffic lights, Buscemi had to wait for a green light to go because they couldn't pay for a police presence to block the street off. Yeah. Like, so they had to wait for like the thing to go, like the other light to go orange, and then okay, action, and like again go. We've all been there. I appreciate that. But
in New York, you don't need a permit if you never use a tripod. So
if you use
carrying cameras around the city.
Yeah, I don't know how we'd go with the guns though.
Yes, that would be difficult.
We did it very
Be arrested
secretly,
like Monty
if you
Python.
remember.
Yes.
I was
Oh yeah.
very nervous carrying around that prop gun.
Yes.
Yeah, before we get into it, just because I'm sure we're going to be, some criticism is going to come up. I think I guess I want to ask you guys, because every time I watch this movie, this is probably the fourth time I've seen this movie over, my entire life. So whatever, I am 35 now, and I don't think I've seen it in 10 years, but I think I watched it 2 or 3 times growing up after it came out, probably once in college. Whether or not you find the flaws in this movie, I just personally want to say as a caveat, by the time this thing is finished, it is still obvious to me that objectively across time and specific to 1992 or whenever this came out, I think it was 92, Quentin Tarantino was a rabid dog about to fall, come off the leash. And it must have been exciting for a movie like this to come out at the time. That guy has something to say fearlessly, raucously, shamelessly, violently, and you just kind of can't help but turn away. He's like the car crash with a smile on his face that you kind of just want to see what he does next. So before we get too deep into it, that is still my ultimate takeaway. It's not my favorite Tarantino movie. I think he has gotten way better at everything, whether because he's been able to figure out how to use the amount of money and these huge budgets that he has compared to this movie, or just writing. I think his writing has gotten much better, but
his writing has gotten better, that's for sure.
Every time I meet a Tarantino fan and they're like, "Oh, Reservoir Dogs is his best film," I'm always like,
"No,
what?
Mean Streets is better for Scorsese than Reservoir Dogs."
It was funny because I hadn't seen this, but my wife has, and she's like getting ready for work to go to work, and like she's hanging outdoors waiting for the lines that she knows are coming and stuff. So it's like, I get it. It's a great film. And she made a very interesting point, because I started bagging the film out a little bit. I'm like, it's a little bit all over the shop. I don't like the dialogue. She's like, okay, keep in mind, this was 1992 and technically his first film. And I'm like, you're right.
Yeah.
Like this is him coming out of the gate. And for coming out of the gate, you've done well. Keep doing this. This is what he did well.
Yeah,
exactly. I don't know how you could feel any other way about it.
I should put a caveat. I know that Mean Streets wasn't Scorsese's first film. Again, this wasn't exactly
as you said, though. This was
it was his first time that he had some money.
I think Tarantino had made a couple shorts. He had written a couple screenplays. I think this was the first one that got picked up and taken seriously. It went to the Sundance Lab. I'm pretty sure he worked this at the Sundance Lab with Harvey Keitel. And Steve Buscemi came in and did some scenes. So he this was the first one that was taken really seriously. And it doesn't matter. It still stands, Dave. Like, this was his real first time at the plate. I think he showed what he's made of. I'm not surprised that the guy who made this movie has turned into the man who has had such a prolific career. And I can't wait to see his 10th
also,
final film.
I want to point out, while you're watching this film, what you are looking at is the benefits of film school workshops and film festivals, because the friends you make in those, it's not just what you learn, it's the friends you make who will go, oh no, I know a person for that, I'll give him a call.
Yeah.
And you're able to put together one of the most fucking phenomenal casts.
Yeah. Can you imagine like if right out of the gate you get those motherfuckers to star in your first movie? Are you kidding me? That's
like, God, dude, if I like decide to direct something and Buscemi walks on my set, I'm like, hi, I know. How do you want to do this?
I mean,
I know, dude.
Let's talk.
One step away from Wayne's World. We're not worthy. Like,
we talked a little bit about the writing and how his actual writing got better, but the plot structure, which maybe was borrowed / stolen from other films. So it opens with the opening scene, which not quite as Shakespearean as the Social Network that we just talked about as that opening sequence. Because it doesn't actually talk about plot, but as Dave mentioned, there's a lot of character in there. Roll credits and then screaming over the credits, and I'm like, what happened? I don't understand what's going on. And then it's Tim Roth essentially bleeding out in a car with Harvey Keitel. I forgot about that, to be honest with you. The last
this
time
movie
I saw this
fucks
film
with time
was maybe
badly
10 years ago. Yeah, and I was like, what? We go to the end? What about the heist? There's a heist film that never shows the heist. I always forget that. It's the heist film that doesn't show the heist.
Yes.
And then, so Tim Roth's bleeding out, and then they go to the rendezvous point, which all makes sense. This is all, so even though the writing, there's a lot of dialogue stuff that Tarantino's playing with, the plot is very simple at this point. There's a heist. It went wrong. We don't know why. They're at the rendezvous point. Buscemi is there by himself, and then Keitel and Roth come in. Roth's bleeding out. So there's 3 people there, and in that conversation, based on the timeline of they were ambushed too quickly for a bank to have tipped off the cops. They realized there's probably a cop. There's probably a rat. Pretty fucking simple for like 30 minutes through the movie, which is great. We don't want to overcomplicate it, and those scenes are amazing pieces of theater captured pretty well. So what do you guys think about the story?
I love that he stuck to the rule as well, that if you want your movie to be great, Steve Buscemi has to lose his shit at least once in your movie.
And he was patient for that scene. That was
Coen Brothers eventually learned the same rule.
Yes.
Yeah. Jeff, I think you're totally
that man
right,
loses
dude.
his shit better than anyone on film. I'll stand by it.
It's just all you're waiting for in every movie. I think, let's give it up for one. A lot of times, let's put on our filmmaker hats here for a second. You're sitting there and you're trying to decide.
I would have put Steve Buscemi and Dennis Leary in the same film. Holy crap.
Screaming at each other. just fucking two guys losing it.
Sorry, carry on.
No, you're good, dude. Put on your filmmaker cap and think like, all right, we're making this our first feature. Like, you kind of can't help but think, what are our means? What are our resources? What's the easiest way to tell a compelling story within this, this framework? And I think what Quentin did bravely, which I have always respected him for, whether or not you like the violence and stuff in his movies, as a storyteller and a filmmaker, he knew first and foremost, I am writing for actors to bring their A game. I have a style. Clearly, he has a very rich style. When you're reading or listening to Quentin Tarantino's screenplay, but look at the performances over his canon that he has drawn out, starting with this one. Like, as Jeff said, you said, well, these are like pieces of theater. Can you imagine this movie with less talent delivering those lines?
No, I
with
couldn't.
covering scenes? We would have been trying to cut.
No.
How would we have edited together? Just the first scene between Mr. Pink and Mr. White. It's a long scene. They have a lot of dialogue together. Can you imagine trying to edit that together with two decent performances, not great performances? Fucking nightmare. I mean, you wouldn't have been able to pay for post-production.
It wouldn't have mattered. Like, nobody would have seen that movie because the dialogue in this, let's face it, is not great.
It's not.
But the actors elevate it to a point where it gets it over the line. But it's definitely those performances. Like, if you have had like lesser known actors or less skilled actors in those roles, I don't think this movie would have been as popular as it is.
There's some moments which maybe he borrowed these from international films, but like the moment where Steve Buscemi said, again, this is 1992. I was too young, so I don't have the historical context of when these kinds of things happened. But when Harvey Keitel says to Steve Buscemi,
5-year-old Jeff didn't go see fucking Reservoir Dogs.
When Harvey Keitel says to Steve Buscemi, and he's like, "You think there's a rat?" Is like, if there's a rat, then anybody could be the rat. Even you could be the rat. And Steve Buscemi, who was just accused of being a rat, says, "There you go. Now you're using your fucking head." I feel like I haven't seen a lot of movies pre-1992 that were that blatant. Like, you should be blaming me. You should be accusing me. I know you have a gun, but if you were smart, you would consider pointing it at me. I feel like those kinds of little snippets, which again, he probably borrowed from other films, but I hadn't seen them. So kudos to him for bringing it into our lexicon. Because this independent gangster film, I think gangster films were so glorialized, right? This is after Cape Fear remake was recent. Obviously, a lot of Scorsese. This is the year after, 2 years after Goodfellas. But like, I don't know. I just think that's good, like film school, but also just like independent film stuff that's really compelling. Even if some of the other dialogue around it is kind of frenetic, maybe the characters are just not smart or frenetic. Maybe they don't speak very in a way that's particularly structured. You know what I mean? So
let's point out that we've had a conversation about Quentin Tarantino multiple times on this show, and I can't remember which one of you said it about the
if it was the watermark. It was me. Yeah.
Well, you were both talking about how you have issues with Tarantino sometimes, and I think was it you who said sometimes you feel like there's a watermark of Quentin Tarantino like across every frame of his movies.
I said that for
all right, but so at least this man has found his truth. There's a weird dichotomy to Quentin Tarantino's movies where he wants you to know you are watching a movie. The dialogue is not the way people actually talk in real life yet. The reason it's a dichotomy is because he does what you're talking about. There's a gritty, grounded, realistic, like of the underbelly of the way people actually figure things out and communicate to each other through that stylized dialogue. And again, I'm just trying to imagine what it would have been like seeing something back then versus comparing it to a Django, Inglourious Basterds, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he's just so much more refined, so much more mature. I can't imagine. The man has quite a large ego, and I understand, that. I don't. Maybe I've never felt the way he's felt, but I appreciate.
Big ego. Dave's like, yeah.
He does have a big ego.
No,
but
seriously,
clearly,
have you heard the anecdote about where he stopped the screening at Sundance? Like they put the wrong lens on the projector, so it was cutting off the edges of the film, and he stopped the screen. The opening screening of this film, he stood up in the audience and stopped the screening of his first directorial feature at Sundance, and made him start it again after they fixed it.
That's great.
Look, if he figured that out in the credits, I don't really mind that. I understand. Yeah. There's nothing worse than when you're watching. Remember when we were watching a film you worked on, and the fucking projector was fucked up, and we were all like, stop the fucking movie. Let's fucking fix it. We're all sitting here for 2 hours.
It is so reassuring. Like, I will say that film festivals in America, get your shit together, because I've had one of these on like the first feature I worked on. There was half the plate of the projector was like colored pink. I'm the colorist on the fucking film. Yeah, I noticed when they turned pink when they walked on the right hand side of the screen, and we've had one. I had one in New York where they just completely fucked out the audio. I've had another one.
It happens, dude. Yeah. Yes, it happens. So now it shouldn't have happened at Sundance. So I understand why he was so pissed off. I would not have been stressed about that at Sundance. But all right, anyway, there's another little nutshell moment for Quentin Tarantino, just to kind of get behind the renegade, craziness of this man that has clearly just made it work. A few years later, he was at Cannes and he won Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival for Pulp Fiction. And that was the last year of Krzysztof Kieslowski's made a trilogy, 3 colors, red, white, and blue. Mm-hmm. And that was the last year of the last one coming out. The man was passing away from cancer. Polish master filmmaker. A lot of the Europeans wanted him to win. When Quentin was announced as the winner, he went up. He was grabbing the award out of the person's hand, and some woman yells from the audience, "Kieslowski, Kieslowski!" He grabs the award, he puts on his shades, and he fucking gives him the middle finger. He's holding the Palme d'Or in his hand, wearing the fucking shades in his black suit, and he's just got a picture of him holding up his fucking bird. I mean, that just says it all, right? This guy just doesn't give a shit. So I think the biggest anomaly about Quentin Tarantino is that you don't even have to respect him to respect his hustle. The guy is just he's unstoppable. He's a freight train, and you kind of can't look away. It's that car accident thing. So be honest with me, when you got into the middle of this movie and you finally got kind of used to what he was doing with the dialogue, you kind of got used to this style. Did it sink in? Did you sink into it, or were you fighting the dialogue the whole time, Dave?
This film gets better and better as it goes along. By the time you get to the end, you're in it. You're gone. I mean, I would say the torture scene is
the end of the torture scene.
The torture scene and how it ends. I will go on record now as one of the best scenes in independent cinema.
Agreed. It's like the play. Sure. It's like a play. It's the end of an act, right? You're like, oh my god! Like when it fucking
Well, the thing is, at that point, anyone could die, anyone could get it, and you don't know whether this is gonna whether he's gonna light him up or what.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to spoil this a little bit. I don't know how you're.
If you haven't seen that, I haven't seen the movie, and I've seen that scene 6 times. So you know.
But because I heard something recently saying that the bottleneck episode of television shows was 10 years away at this point. Sopranos is nowhere near coming out 6 feet under. So it's obviously this kind of stuff is never going to be on an NBC drama. But the fact that if you took out the flashbacks and the backstories, this is just a warehouse, one set piece, couple different characters, who done it. It's
it's a play.
It's a play. It's the killing. This is the killing. You could see it, and it's a play. But when that ends with Tim Roth shooting Michael Madsen, who's a psychopath, and he just turns around and says, "I'm a cop." You can just picture it, blackout, roll credits, and then everybody is dying to see next week's episode. They immediately go to IMDb and give it a 10. And this is 15 years ahead of that.
Yeah.
So, but I love, but they have to flesh it out. So to your answer, John, does all the dialogue? Yes, I get it all. There's one scene that for some reason I noticed that I checked out in, and it was the Chris Penn, Michael Madsen, wrestling in the room scene with Joe, because it was all in one place. And I love the flashbacks having motion and life, because the rest of the film, the opening scene was in the diner, but it's okay because it's the opening scene, it's the exposition. the other scenes are all in the warehouse. And even when they move into different rooms in the warehouse, you know, it's like One Night in Miami or any other place that's like a play set in one location. But in the flashback scene that we're only in the office of Joe, I feel like you got to earn that, right? There's like Death of Salesman scenes that earn it really well. And that scene, they're fighting, they're doing this, they're that. And I'm like, okay, but what's their backstory? Can we get on with this? Because Mr. White's was so good. And I really wanted to know Mr. White, meaning Harvey Keitel's backstory, was so interesting. And then Michael Madsen's backstory is just him and Chris Penn wrestling and then talking. And I was like, I wish we saw a little bit more. So that's the only part of this movie that I think, if I'm being critical, and I'll drink even though you're not buzzing me, which I appreciate.
Sure, there you go.
There we go. Okay.
You're thirsty, I'll buzz you.
But I agree with you. Once he said, I'm a cop, from then on, I mean, it's like any series. It's like any television series. You're like, okay, I have to see this thing through because I need to know what happens next.
Also, correct me if I'm wrong, the cinematographer from this also shot American Psycho.
Oh, is that right? Nice.
I believe he did, yeah. Which means that guy has now created the two scenes that are forever associating a popular song with gratuitous violence.
Yeah.
Because you got Steelers Wheel and Huey Lewis, man, and that you hear those songs and you know what's about to happen.
You're right. And he did Pulp Fiction too, obviously.
Yeah.
Apparently this movie, some of the funding came from them selling they basically set up the payment so that they would pay for some of the movie with the sales from the album.
Yes.
It was one of the first times that was done.
That was actually a counter deal so they could get stuck in the middle at all.
Yeah, because
they didn't have the money for it. They didn't have the money for it.
That was the entire soundtrack budget went on that, basically. Yeah.
Same year as The Bodyguard, so right when the renaissance of these popular albums. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it, that Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino are notorious for their styles aren't similar, but I think people would say that some of the subject matter violent, usually.
Yeah, I'm not comparing Kill Bill to The Departed.
Exactly, but you know what I mean. And these guys almost never use original scoring. Almost never. It's mostly needle drops and it's mostly soundtracks. And I'm sure they figured out a way to make some money from it. But it's just interesting that they both write in that similar way. What do you guys think about? Does Harvey Keitel get credit for like being in the first film of both of those dudes? Like, how did he see this one coming? Do you think he's like, oh, I've been here before, I've read a script like this, I want to be a part of it? I think this guy, do you think he nurtures it, or do you think he just
he's young and hungry, man? He's just doing everything he fucking can. Maybe
he was, because
I don't know. He wasn't young at this point.
Young at the time.
I think
he looks pretty young still.
If he's a producer on this independent film with this new person, I mean, this is later in his career. This is right in your could fuck this up zone. He's nurturing because he wants this movie to be really good.
Yeah,
his name's on it. He's nurturing it. That's just a guess, but
I think so too. I also think it's interesting that
he fought for Buscemi too, who was his scene partner for a lot of this.
I mean, that was a good fight.
Yeah, he fought for.
That was a good fight.
There's not a thing I've I'll rave about Buscemi till the cows come home. There's not a thing I've seen him in I didn't really love him in.
He was my standout for this. Did anybody? Well, let's jump to that question that we usually get to at some point. Obviously, everybody's great. Keitel and Buscemi have the biggest part, so they're the most obvious to stick out. But Buscemi for me. What about you guys?
Buscemi for me.
Yeah, it's probably him. It's a little unfair because that character, anybody who gets to flip out, if you own the flip out, it's right. Jeff, I think you know from acting, like it's kind of hard to play the straight guy. Like
you gotta earn your flip out though. If you're just
the straight person.
Yeah.
I mean, Keitel, as it went on, I didn't like him at the beginning. I'm wondering, did they shoot this in order, like in chronological order?
They did
because he got better as it went on.
They had to keep the violent stuff till the end because the backers were watching the dailies.
Oh,
and they did the Godfather thing where they wanted the backers because they were worried that the violence would get cut or get cut down, or that that it wouldn't they wouldn't be able to screen the film, because the 90s was a very prude decade. If anybody didn't know this, very famous story about
coming out of the 80s for sure. That was a super prude time, right?
Yeah, fucking Reagan. And but there's a very famous
fucking
story about
Reagan.
Not Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman.
There's a documentary title.
In Waiting for Guffman, they did my friend studied this in marketing. My friend Chris Martin, not that Chris Martin, studied this in a marketing class in college. Waiting for Guffman, they do the Raging Bull, "Did you fuck my wife" scene, and they said if you cut that scene, you'll have so few F words that you can be PG-13. And they said, we think it's a really funny scene. We want to keep it in. So it was rated R, and it was sold as a hard R. And so therefore it bombed at the box office, because this is a very prude decade. You could make these insensitive jokes, but you couldn't in our film.
I'm sorry. I don't know if you can't really base the decisions of the MPAA on whether or not America is prudish, because those guys are basically rating your film depending on how much money you have.
True. But to that point, the backers, though, they didn't want this film to have any problems, new director and everything. So they put off the violent things to the end. So they pretty much did shoot it close, not in actual chronological order, but pretty much, yeah. And Tim Roth bleeding out is really, really, really funny too. What was I going to say? I was going to say something interesting about Quentin. We keep talking about Quentin, but it's hard to not watch this film and put it in the catalog of him. So he glorifies violence. He does. But what he does, especially in this film and Pulp Fiction, which come right after this, is you don't want to be any of the characters. So even though you want to watch the violence for sure, at no point do I want to live in a society that's that violent. At no point do I want to be a gangster robbing banks. You know what I mean? So do you think he pulls that off in here? And then does he get a bad rap? Because ultimately a lot of his movies, while they are glorifying violence, they don't. Well, I guess I can only speak.
Is he pushing it back on you? It's like you should feel a little uneasy because you're enjoying this.
I think he is,
especially like the Kill Bills and Django.
Yeah, dude. I think he's aware of what he's doing. I don't think it's because he has this intense social consciousness. I think Quentin Tarantino gets a real kick out of violence in movies. I think he's said that a million times. I think we should believe him.
I mean, have you ever seen in like a Chinese Western? Holy crap, man.
That's what I was just about to say. I think he is attracted to exploitation style. He loves the kung fu genre. He loves the gangster genre. He's pretty shameless about the stuff that influences him so heavily. And my brother has said it before, and I think it's true. I think he likes taking the best parts of those genre type of films and just shoving them into his own style. And you get to just kind of feel like you're touching on all of that stuff. And kind of therefore, with that exploitive take, do you write a character with tons of empathy that draws an audience into their perspective? Not much past the fuck yeah aspect of, like, you're kind of rooting for Beatrice Kiddo and the Kill Bills, but I still don't know if I actually am Beatrice Kiddo or if I want to be. She has
nothing else
like,
to lose until the end when you realize that she has a child. But you're sitting there and you're like, well, if she's gonna, it's worth dying over. Whereas there is heist, none of this is worth dying over in this Reservoir.
Yeah.
No, this is like a tragedy, also, isn't it?
Jeff,
like, I feel like some of his movies.
Jeff, you remember that? You remember that short film we shot for that competition once in Astoria? And
the one that I drank all night for?
The one where like the guy is the last man standing and he picks up the money and leaves. I didn't realize we accidentally ripped off the end of this movie.
Yes. Oh my God. Steve Buscemi. I love how unglorious Steve Buscemi's exit is.
Yes.
Also, they were his diamonds the whole time anyway. So part of me is wondering why he didn't just drive away. You know what I mean? But like, good guy that he sticks around. But so then the fact that he gets him at the end and he's fucked up. Like, yeah, he has the diamonds, but it's not like he's going to go live a lavish lifestyle. He's probably going to do a Shawshank and go to Mexico. He's never come back.
Yeah, he's going to spend the rest of his life nervous as hell looking over his shoulder. That's what he's going to do.
Yeah, I think he gets caught. But
oh yeah, the cops were right there. So yeah.
Yeah, they are. Like, I thought the noises and the sound so theatrical, right? So it's like a play. Like the sound design's coming in. They're right outside. He's about to go get the shootout action.
Because at that point they've spent their money on steel as well. They've run out of money, so we have to do this in camera.
We all watched this today, right? By the way, we should let everybody know that this is pretty fresh.
I watched it a few days ago, but it was very fresh. It was very fresh. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, what else can you say? You just said it, but like, it's so true. We're talking about the movie Reservoir Dogs, and it's almost impossible to talk about it without mostly talking about Quentin Tarantino. Because other people made this movie with him.
The man's a little bit of a rock star. He likes to put himself front center. I mean, he's in it. He's in a lot of his films. But yeah, he likes to put himself front center. So if you're going to talk about a Tarantino film, you're going to talk about Tarantino because it's a film from Tarantino.
Yeah.
So he associates himself with the film, like the style of the film. If you're going to see a Tarantino film, you're going to see something you wouldn't normally see.
Dave, I'm going to be real with you too, dude. I know you might not agree with this, so tell me if how much you disagree with me.
Mm-hmm.
But
the buzzer will decide. Yeah.
I don't know. I I don't know if he's ever really missed. He's made 9 feature films, and from box office to critical review, you can compare him to himself. I don't think he's ever had an actual flop.
You can't gush him for 2 seconds.
I'm gushing him for saying Tarantino is the most brilliant, amazing, beautiful, fantastic, essentially important person.
I should never have given you.
I'm not
buttons.
saying that, but come at me. Do you guys disagree with that? Like, he's never really had a flop. Like, I think Tarantino fans might all have a different movie that's their favorite because I think they all have something to say. And
well,
no,
he was just on Bill Maher this week, and Bill Maher did the whole thing like, "What the fuck is wrong with you saying you're gonna stop directing? Like other people direct into their 70s."
yeah.
And I think part of the reason is he's sitting there and he's like, "I'd rather go out undefeated than wait for another masterpiece."
And well, funnily enough, that's where he also said that he was thinking about remaking Reservoir Dogs.
Oh yeah, idiot Jeff. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hope that's not his 10th. I won't
that is
see
no, that is not. He said I'm not going to do it because he said something about like directors get to a point at one stage where they just don't get any better.
Right, and Bill challenged that, and I would challenge that. We just did Psycho a week or two ago, and that was one of Alfred Hitchcock's final films. He did The Birds after that, then a couple other, and then Alfred Hitchcock Presents. But
George Lucas.
George, get out of here, Dave. Guy, where's my buzzer? Buzz yourself.
Kurosawa, dude. Kurosawa. I think he made Ran when he was like 84 or something.
Yes, Ron, exactly. Tarantino. So here we go. Tarantino can retire until he can't, until he makes that one film that he knows is Ran. Okay. Well,
yeah, I mean, there is an R-rated Star Trek floating around that he's been writing.
Well, yeah,
that they keep on again, off again, on again, off again. We'll see what happens with that.
Did you guys know he was?
Star Trek where they use the N-word?
After Reservoir Dogs, did you guys know he was approached to direct Speed and Men in Black?
Right. Hollywood's funny, right?
I've had it with
hilarious. He wins.
Can you imagine how different those movies would have been?
He wins the Palme d'Or, gives his middle finger to the audience, and they go, "Hey, do you want to make Men in Black for a studio?
Would you like to make Men in Black? It's going to be rated PG-13.
It's kind of like Reservoir Dogs. It has suits in it. It's
basically Reservoir Dogs with aliens.
With aliens.
Yeah. He probably was like, okay, let me meet with Will Smith. And then he said, Will, this is bullshit, man. We got to get out of here. Let's go make something else.
I kind of wish Steve Buscemi would have replaced Keanu Reeves in Speed just so I could see it. I just want to see that version of Speed.
Oh,
Lady,
God.
we can't go over 55 miles an hour.
I mean, the fuck me scene would still be the same.
All right. Well, anything else besides smoking Chesterfields that you guys want to do to bring this out to a close? Any other meat on the bone? Anything on your notes?
No, this I enjoyed. It was
a lot of people.
Yeah, dude.
I listened to a lot of pods. Where
should you have seen it by now, Dave?
Shit about this, but the story's so good, Dave. Yeah.
Yes, I should.
It is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, you think you should have?
Yeah, I feel like it would have been even more impactful back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Why? I know we just talked a whole bunch, but can you clarify specifically why would it have been more impactful?
I think I just heard my wife clapping from the next room. I'm not even kidding. I don't know what's going on. That sounded like she was clapping. I don't. It just in the 90s it would have been more impactful because like you didn't get that level of violence and intensity in a lot of stuff in the 90s, and I feel like it would have been more impactful then having now we're in like 2021 and that level of violence. I was like, really? That's violent? Like they kind of panned away. I was waiting for some curtains to come into shot or some shit. But yeah, it was. I feel like in the 90s this would have been way more impactful. So yes, I definitely should have seen this by now. Doesn't mean it suffers for it. You can still watch this film. It's as a directorial debut. This is amazing.
Why
Casey, give us a ring. Call in, dude. Tell us if you should have seen it by now.
Why did Harvey Keitel?
Yeah, Casey, go to the Facebook page and apologize.
Yeah, Casey. We knew there was a rat. Why did Harvey Keitel pull his gun at the end? It's in the 90s. I would have. For me, I was just like, oh, dude. But in the 90s, I would have been like, no, Harvey.
Something was fucking happening in the independent film industry in the early 90s, and Quentin was the tip of the spear.
Yeah.
So I think you got to watch this knowing it's that first film, and I think you're going to enjoy it because of that and regardless of that. So I think you should give it a shot. It's something to learn. It's entertaining.
Yes.
All right.
Fuck yeah.
Well, Friends, thank you so much. We did the Social Network this past week. Stay tuned for everything we have coming up. Please follow and like us on the socials. We are going to give you a couple suggestions really quick of what we've been watching. So before the people go, Dave, any suggestions?
Why do we always start with me?
Because it's our thing.
Okay, cool. All right.
Go ahead.
Did you just tune me?
No, that was not a tuning fork, actually. That was somebody buzzing into my apartment. So.
Okay, cool. I have two for this week. I watched two films. Sort of. My wife, ironically, after we did I think it was our second show, where one of the films we did was Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And yeah. And so she saw this film on HBO Max called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. And because she'd watched Pride and Prejudice and Zombies with me and enjoyed it, she was like, I'm going to give this a shot. So we sat down and we gave it a shot. It's fucking amazing.
Nice.
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter fucking holds up, dude. Give it a watch. It is amazing. I also, Stars have now acquired the Mila Jovovich film Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
Nice. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay, cool.
Oh.
He doesn't want to get buzzed. Yeah, there you go.
I know, I'm doing it anyway.
Dude, okay, hang on.
John, what about you?
I made it 40 fucking minutes to this film. I turned it off and put on Rick and Morty.
Cool. John?
I'm buzzing you again. It didn't go through. I just buzzed you again for turning it off 40 minutes. There
You're
you
in
go.
England. It takes a while.
It does take a while. Nothing new for me. Same thing I said last time. That episode, miniseries Time, and I'm still working my way through Peaky. How about you, Jeff? Anything?
I watched a movie called A Week Away, and I would not recommend it to anybody. All right, friends, here we go.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you so much. Stay tuned with what we're up
So
to.
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, everyone, for the win.
That's the one. All right, these knuckleheads are probably going to talk about Fast and Furious soon, but please like, subscribe, send us suggestions for things that we should have seen by
I'm
now.
seeing it this week.
Or our other segment, which we need more suggestions of, which is, was it really that bad? If you've seen a movie that you don't think was as bad as people say, please recommend it to us, and we're going to turn it into a drinking game.
Yeah, we're going to argue it.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great 4th of July weekend, or if you're in London like John, have a great just any old weekend, and we will see you next week.